Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. This is episode 119. Sometimes I'm stuck. Back in the 60s and 70s, cars weighed so much more than they weigh today. They were made out of steel, and I mean, it wasn't unusual to have a 6-ton car or truck. We had this old Chevy. I think it was a 64. And in the snow in Michigan, because we didn't even have the greatest tires, going to visit my dad at Christmas, my car got stuck. Stuck in a snowbank that was about 4 feet deep and stuck on an angle. It took a truck with a chain and about 8 pretty big guys to get that thing unstuck. I share that with you because you know what? Sometimes we really get stuck. And if we think we're just going to get out of a mess because we want to get out of it or because it's ugly and difficult and challenging and horrible, that's not usually going to be the case. Also, when I was a little girl, one time my friends and I were on the playground and I ended up in a mud puddle. I thought it was a mud puddle anyway, and it sucked my foot down actually just past my knee, probably a good 12, 13 inches. And when I pulled out my foot, it came without my shoe. We only had one pair of shoes each. So I reached down there, my friends reached down there, even my teacher reached down there. We all frantically searched for that shoe, but it never came back. Sometimes when we get stuck, we lose things. We get emotionally stuck. We really do. There are times when someone goes through a really traumatic event. A parent gets divorced, and so they leave. Occasionally, it's really traumatic. A parent leaves and goes off with another person and the remaining parent, and I've seen it go both directions, so it isn't exclusively a mom or exclusively a dad. They are really emotionally devastated. They feel betrayed. They go through trauma. Their life radically changes. They lose their home. They don't have enough income. They have to cope with all of their own things and their children. That is extraordinarily traumatic to the child because not only did they lose the parent who left them, they lost the parent who's still there, or at least they don't recognize them as the parent they once had before. And sometimes kids get stuck emotionally right there at that trauma point. If a child is kidnapped or raped, physically beaten pretty badly by a group of bullies, or frankly, it can actually be horribly emotionally traumatized by a group of bullies. Girls talk about mean girls. Sometimes that will happen to a girl and she will really get emotionally stuck right there. She has her doubts about ever having a good friend or the way that women behave toward her. Just we all can get stuck at a trauma point. If we don't get help getting past that, here's the difficult news. That person remains emotionally that age. So if that happens to a person at 11, they might grow up and be 6 feet 2 inches tall, but they act emotionally just like an 11-year-old. And they can't get past it because they're stuck. If a young woman gets raped, I heard of a young woman that was raped at about 15 years old. And if someone doesn't show her support and help her work through that, she's going to be 15 years old the rest of her life. And she's going to go through her life afraid of men and pretty paranoid. And you know how 15-year-olds act. They're all moody, and one minute they're okay, and the next minute they're acting like a jerk. And they're going to be 15 years old for the rest of their life. The possibility of maturation really is stopped right at that moment. Those people get stuck. Sometimes we humans, we get stuck. So my first question for you today is, Mom, Dad, has anything really traumatic happened in my past and I got stuck? Because if so, it's going to be very challenging for you to be a mature, responsible adult and to teach your children the things that they need to know in order to become a mature and responsible adult. It isn't the end of the world. You can still get help. You can get unstuck. but you need to face that very truthfully. Is there anywhere that you are stuck? My mom and dad got divorced when I was a kid. I dealt with this really quite differently than some of my siblings, and I can honestly say to you that I have a few siblings who are stuck right there. Never, ever got over my mom and dad's divorce. So I know how this looks. It's not a very pretty picture. And I know the work it takes to get unstuck, just so you know, and we'll talk about that. Okay, then. Sometimes I'm stuck as an adult in a behavior pattern I hate. Okay, that can be true of an addiction. So, guys, women, maybe you drink a lot more than you should on Friday night. Maybe you get high and you know you shouldn't, and you don't have any business, and you do things that are irresponsible, but you're stuck. Maybe you get high every day. You really are stuck in a behavior pattern that you know is not good. It's not going to contribute anything to your life. It certainly isn't helping out your family life, and you're stuck. And you know that you need to get unstuck. You're just not quite sure how. Maybe you're a person who sits in front of the computer every day, hours and hours and hours, whether that means porn or games or whatever, and someone walks up behind you and they said, "Hey, I really need you." I know, but not right now. Just wait. Or they're knocking on the door. "I need you, I need you." I know, but not right now. And you're not busy, you're just occupied with whatever is on that screen. You're stuck in a behavior that isn't doing anything good for you and can be extraordinarily destructive to your family life. You can get stuck like that. And then we're going to talk about one other area where you can get stuck, and we'll talk about getting unstuck. Okay, so you're in a dead-end job. I mean, you hate this job. You despise this job. You've been there 10 or 12 years. You've hardly ever seen any kind of a raise. You don't really get respect. You constantly get dumped on. You're doing a ton of work, but you're not getting any recognition for it. You're certainly not getting paid. You're not compensated for everything you're doing. And yet, you won't go apply for other jobs. You won't go to job interviews. You won't just up and quit because you've had enough. You're stuck. You hate it. It's a dead-end job. It's not something you want to do the rest of your life, but you can see yourself doing this for the next 20 or 30 years because you're stuck. Okay? All right. These are just a few areas where you can get stuck, but I'm just letting you know that sometimes we're stuck. Oh, one more short one. We can get stuck in a bad relationship. No kidding. You have 2 or 3 babies with someone, and suddenly here you are and you're stuck. This person is abusive to you. This person doesn't take good care of your kids or your household. This person is out running around being unfaithful to you. I'm not really sure why you're still in the middle of all of that, but you're stuck. You're not really sure how in the world to get out. Okay, so we'll talk about some of these areas of life because they all have the same answer in a sense. What in the world are you supposed to do when you're stuck? Well, this is a great question. Let's talk about this. All right. 1, admit it. Wow, we hate doing this as humans. I mean, it is so challenging for us, but you got to own up. Okay? Wow, I have a real big problem. I have a big problem with this computer. I have a big problem with alcohol. I have a big problem with porn. I have a big problem with my job. I have a big problem with my mate. I have a problem with my child. I have a problem with where I am emotionally and all the things I can't cope with and I never dealt with. I'm stuck. I have a problem. Admit it. Next, figure it out. What in the world are you going to do? Okay? I already told you, very, very seldom do we get unstuck ourselves. The bigger the problem, like that big, huge car, the more it's going to take to get it out. It might take something massive to get it out, like a truck and a change, or a whole bunch of guys. It's going to take more than just a little bit to get out of this. And you have to know that. This is going to, I'm going to have some help. I'm never going to get this otherwise. Then, look at your options. Because there always are options. I think the hardest thing sometimes when we're stuck is we don't see the options. We don't know that we have options. So you need to look at the options. Okay, we'll talk about the job one. That's maybe the one that's kind of easiest for all of us to relate to. I can stay here. Yes, I can. I can be miserable for the next 20 years. Yes, I can. I mean, I've already been miserable for 10 or 12. I'm not sure why I would do that, but I can. That's an option. I can stay here. Or another option is I can say, this is stupid. I can just ditch it entirely, like walk. Okay? So you see lots of people do that with marriages. They just get fed up. They're finished. They're like way finished. They walk. Okay? That is an option. Just walk. There's an option. I can work on this. I can go to my boss. I can literally write out a list of every single thing that I do for this company and how additional responsibilities have been given to me. Oh, and I've met them. And two people used to do this job, and now I'm doing both of our jobs, but I'm still getting paid the same amount, never getting compensated for that or getting any recognition. An option is lay it out. In a marriage, you can do the exact same thing. It may not be well received depending on where your spouse's troubles are, but you might be surprised. It might actually work. You go and say, listen, I deserve the respect of any human being, and that doesn't include you being out in the streets spreading it all around. You need to be faithful to me. And in looking at those options, you need to have established boundaries and expectations, which say, so to your boss, I need to be compensated for this, or else I'm just going to go back to doing my own job. I mean, I have it in writing that this is my job description, and that's what I'm going to do. So you give me all these other responsibilities verbally, I'm not going to do them. I'm just not going to do them. That's not going to happen. Oh, they'll be ticked. Let me tell you what, especially because you've already been doing it this whole time. That's their problem and not yours. You live by your job description. All this other stuff they've laid on you and dumped on you and expected out of you, and you somewhat foolishly went along with, stop doing it. They'll work it out. They'll either hire someone and alleviate some of the weight off of you, or else they'll give you a different job description and more pay. I mean, you can make changes. You can say the same thing to your spouse or to your children. This is going to change. I am not going to tolerate this. This is not acceptable, and it's going to change. And if it doesn't change, here's what's going to happen in response to that. Okay? You can say to your spouse, we need to go to marital counseling. You need to deal with anger management. You need to deal with your addiction. There are lots of options, and you need to look at them, and you need to start working on them. And then you've got to deal with yourself. Hard one. So the next question I'm going to ask you is, how am I doing at dealing with myself? Did you hear me? How am I doing at dealing with myself? So oftentimes, especially someone who's emotionally stuck, they want the other guy to do it. They want the other guy to fix it. They want the other guy to change. Sometimes that's not the problem. In fact, frequently, it's I need to change. I've got to deal with it. I've got to do something. You know, this is hard, okay? Well, it took a lot of effort and exertion to get that car out of the snowbank. It took a lot for me to get my foot out of that mud that sucked me down. Oh, and my shoe got left behind. It takes a great deal of work, and some things might get left behind. Okay? That means you might have to leave behind your anger about what happened and your frustration and all of that response as a child, but it's going to take you some help to get there. Again, I'm going to tell you, get your hands on a counselor, a pastor, maybe even a psychologist or a psychiatrist if it was severe emotional trauma. Work through it, get through it, and then you're going to have to learn some new behaviors. That's the hardest thing of all, because it's so easy to blame it all on the other guy and expect them to do something. But as I said, you might have to give your boss the ultimatum of, I'm going to do my job description. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I was hired for. Whoa, and you got to be able to handle all the rest of what's going to come. Or you look at your spouse and say, you're not going to treat me like this anymore. And if you're going to be out in the streets all the time and bring me home all these diseases, I'm not going to be having a sexual relationship with you. You're going to knock that stuff off, and you're going to go to the doctor, and I'm going to know that you're disease-free. Then you're going to be with me. And if 3 and 4 nights a week you're gone again, guess what? One of those nights you're going to come back, I'm not going to be here with the kids. Yeah, these are very difficult things. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort to change what is, and sometimes you have to leave certain things behind to get unstuck. I would like to say to you, I have a great deal of compassion for those of you who are stuck right now. It is not that easy sometimes to get unstuck, but just like the car couldn't go anywhere until it was out of the snowdrift, you're not going to go anywhere until you get unstuck. So get some help. You don't have to be stuck forever where you are right now. I promise you this. I have lived this and I have helped others get there too. Sometimes we get stuck, but the great news is we can get out of it as well. Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. It will be great seeing you soon. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.